So, we just finished up a 3-part series on the sprint backlog because there are 3 parts to the sprint backlog. And today we're going to have a look at how we can put those basic elements together to get a full cycle. We want to see how they all work together. And it all starts, of course, with the product backlog item or items itself. So, my dear product owner friends, have you taken some time to ideate and brainstorm around the next 3 things that you want to see that will improve your product or your service? Now, I know you got a lot of different ways to come up with these ideas, and if you'll recall, I shared kind of this nickel tour of a streamlined design thinking approach with you on a earlier episode, I guess. And I'm sure that you got it organized with some kind of title or description. Man, I'll tell you what, the title of a product backlog item tends to confuse the crap out of product owners. And I know why, and we're going to get to it, okay, I promise. But this title is kind of important because it's not just visualizing work, it's socializing it too. So it should be easy to understand, and it should paint a picture of what we're wanting to do that we believe will add value. And in a lot of cases, some simple summary that describes what a user or a system will see to adopt new or changed behaviors. That's really what we're after with software development particularly. And that's why this description matters. So today, we're going to bring the product backlog items to life. We're going to ensure that we're getting the information that the teams need. We're going to stay ahead of them, of course, with our personal share care backlog time, and improve our product and service by focusing on higher level goals. What we don't need to do, and we talked about this earlier, is overly prescribe to-do lists, tasks, and stories and things you just tell them to do, right? We'll use a simple but a cheesy example to draw some parallels, and maybe one that you can relate to probably towards the end of this that's going to work a little bit better for you, I think. Welcome back to the grassroots organic effort called the Planet Product Owner Podcast, where we learn about the art of becoming a better product owner. We also love to tell our friends about this podcast, and we sometimes listen as a team. And of course, we can always thank the host by buying him a coffee. Yeah, buy me a coffee /Planet Product Owner. You can run out and do that today if you like, and I'd be very thankful for it. So today we are going deep. So sit back, buckle up. Let's get to Planet Product Owner. Now, how do we name our product backlog item with a fair description and without explaining it like it's a never-ending story? Look, there's about 100 different ways from Sunday you can do this. All right. I'm going to share with you today what works for me best through all of my travels. And I think it's going to make sense to you because it does transcend a lot of kinds of business models. And remember, we said business models, organizations, they got a lot of variation in problems, solutions, opportunities, methods, processes, but values and principles don't really change that much. So let's try something real quick. Stay with me. Add multiple select from the widget. Provide notification improvements for contact us. Add suggestive content in the cart. And here's an oldie but a goodie. Update storage solutions in the pantry. Now, that's a real nice one there, Clark. Notice the pattern here, though. I've got an action, and then I have some result for or on or to or in or by, and maybe even from some object. So the first part of this phrase or this description, I guess, is the action. It usually tells us what kind of change in behavior we're looking for. The result part gives us a pretty good description of some small outcome that we seek. And finally, the object clarifies where, what, all that stuff might take place. Think of that as like your module, your screen, or your workflow. You get the idea. The main thing to remember is that don't get excited, right? Let's describe this like we're 3 years old. All right. We don't need the summary page of a BRD on a 15th grade reading level when we describe our product backlog item. Now, I get it. A lot of product owners, you don't get a lot of chances to wordsmith the actual title of your product backlog items because unfortunately, sometimes you're put in a position where you're kind of the request passer, right? Or you may be afraid you're going to get slapped on the wrist because somebody else insists that we have this extremely large and verbose description of what we're doing. Well, this, my friends, is the very perspective that we need to change. And look, as a product owner, if you want to create a roadmap or a story map, which you can by this, and by the way, I've had a lot of people ask me for a template for a roadmap and story map. I'm getting there. I promise I'm getting there. I'm going to help you with it. I just want to make sure I get you a good format delivered. I'm recommitted, right? Buy me a coffee and I'll be real committed. But anyway, is this roadmap or story map that you're searching for, right? that you're in pursuit of. It's not going to happen by you copying and pasting a project plan full of tasks. All right, that's just not going to get you there. So let's get to the real cheesy example first and try to find some parallels. Update storage solutions in the pantry. Now, we can all see in this example what we're trying to do. Now, I didn't tell you why yet, right? I didn't say why, but because product owner, you've already done your homework. We're going to have this in detail in our product backlog item. I'll show you in a minute how that works. Now, you might think this is a pretty big rock for a product backlog item. I'm okay with that, because the real question is, how much of this can I get done in my iteration, my sprint, whatever my time box is? More than that, how can I build in some quality checkpoints? I call them built-in quality checkpoints. I don't know what you call them, but I want to be able to continually get feedback and test my assumptions or my hypothesis and make sure that I'm doing the right thing and I'm doing it right. So the way we do that is we take the big rock and we make it smaller rocks. Now, watch what I do here, where I'm taking you on this journey today. I'm going to put a video together pretty soon to help with this, but hang tight. So as a product owner, I want to write seed stories so the team understands the outcomes I desire. All right. So a large seed story for this might read, as a pantry user, I want to have improved storage solutions so I can access things easily and know when to restock. Okay. So now that's kind of the money statement, right? That's the value that I'm adding with it. That's my seed story. That's what I'm trying to do here. Because I could very easily say, I want to have improved storage solutions, and I forget to sow that part. And that really sucks, because now nobody knows why we're doing it. Okay. So now this is where the fun comes in for the product owner, because this is still kind of a big rock, and this is where our user stories come into play. So all I've done is I've named it, I've given a description, right? I know what I'm after. I know what my goal is. I believe it's going to improve our product or our service. And I've started with a basic seed story to kind of encapsulate all this stuff into one little statement, right? Using the template. Now, remember how I told you that the user stories aren't requirements, but they may point to requirements. Well, here's how you could break that down. And what you're going to find is that we're going to have complete user stories with each one of these scenarios, right? Each one of these smaller sets of user stories. Now, as a pantry user, I want to store canned goods so I can access and see them easily. All right, got that. I want to store containers in their own space so they're not mixed with canned goods. Now, I have an is and an is not. I'm showing a compare and contrast there. I want to store bulk items that are not frequently accessed so I can replenish stock. Okay, I qualified it. So I used a little bit more words there, but you know what? I added some clarity to it. Now the team understands. The pantry user wants to store bulk items, then they don't frequently access them. All right, and I want to be able to just replenish stock by doing that. I get it. I get where you're going, right? Here's the one that threw me for a loop, as it will you. I want to store and use powered appliances so I can save counter space in the kitchen. Yeah, threw me for a loop too. Conceal items so they're not visible when the pantry is open. That is for my oatmeal cream pies and other goodies, by the way. So now these are just ideas on how to get started breaking down the big rock. And that bigger rock, right, that's the outcome that we believe will improve our product or our service. That is our product backlog item. Now, as part of this, though, the team needs to be able to break this product goal down into their execution plan. And we got to keep our front porch clean. So for us to do that, creating these smaller stories, smaller than the big, huge rock, but bigger than the small task or the to-do orders that we're trying to give, that's going to help add clarity for the team. And here's I guess the best part for me is that it helps me to maintain my focus on accomplishing the goal. I'm focused on that one goal. So I'm just sitting here at my desk and I'm looking at this particular product backlog item. And I'm putting these smaller stories in here, maybe sometimes even as part of my acceptance criteria. Right? Now, we could obviously go deeper, but you say, Scott, wait a minute. Dude, you told me in the last couple of episodes, don't get too deep into these user stories. You got to help me understand here. Connect some dots. All right, let's connect some dots. So we're going to pick one example just for the sake of time. We're going to decompose it a little bit, look through the lens of contrast and compare. What about if instead of me saying, I want to store canned goods, you are going to get sick of me saying that. I'm already sick of me saying it. I want to store canned goods so I can access and see them easily, right? What if I change that story to, as a pantry user, I want 4 white shelves, 7.5 inches wide with brackets and screws, enough to hold up to 100 pounds of crap 18 inches off the countertop. Okay, now I just told you, I just prescribed everything to you, right? You get the difference now, right? Now, all of these other things maybe could be part of NFRs. They could also be requirements in some cases. But let's look at the example here. My acceptance criteria could indicate some of the requirements that we talked about, but I want to focus on functionality and behavior, not on the technical specs, okay? So given I have canned goods to store, when I store them in the pantry, then I can store them 2 cans deep, or 2 cans tall, or 4 cans tall. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Now, this is a small test script that describes behaviors that I can test, right? Now, note, I did not tell them that it had to be 7.5 inches wide. I'm going to let them figure out that part, because what if they only sell boards that are 7 3/4 inches wide? I mean, is the expectation for me to waste all of my time trimming down, 1/4 of an inch off of this board to make it exactly 7.5? No, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look, you've got some behaviors here that you're describing. I want to try to solve that for you. I want to make sure that we can get there. All right. Now, maybe the pantry scenario is not working with you so well, so let's try something else. We want to add request for service and contact us. Notice I have the action, the result on some object. Okay. So my seed story may be, as an account holder, I want to submit a request for service so I can get my issue resolved. Now, a lot of things have to be done here. You got to create some stories. You're right. And as a product owner, you should create these sub-stories or user stories or smaller stories so the team has more clarity. And you are focusing on the things that are in scope, right? Keeping in mind, we want to build in some quality checkpoints, okay? Now, I told you I'm going to do a video on this, and I think I might already have a video on something like this out on the YouTube channel. I don't know. But let's apply the right thinking pattern around it. We're not going to be prescriptive. We're just going to outline the needs, point back to a requirement so we can focus on outcomes. So as an account holder, I want to be notified when the request is in process, when it's been escalated, when it's complete. These are these smaller user stories that helps me as a product owner walk through what I'm asking the team to do so that I can understand when it's done. Okay. Now, some of these can be blue sky. Some of these can be basic stuff. Some of these can be just, kind of something that we'll never get to, or something maybe simple. I don't know. But the idea is that if I'm describing the behavior that I want to see, right? I want to describe behaviors that we can observe with the stories. And they point back to business requirements, and we let the team organize around, you ready? The intended behavioral outcomes. That's what we want them to get their execution plan together for. Okay. Now, in contrast to that, if I said, instead of saying, I want to know when it's in process, escalated, complete, what if I said, we want to trigger the 0141 routine to publish to a Kafka stream, blah, 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 blah. That, my friends, is your anti-pattern. Okay. That's your anti-pattern. Because again, we want to focus on the intended behavioral outcomes that we want to observe. We want to be able to observe that. Let them figure it out. Now, let's move on to the sprint goal. Okay, for this. Now, you can actually, and obviously, absolutely draft one up that you hope to achieve. But here's the kicker for you. And if you don't get anything else out of today's episode, get this. All right, ready? We're going to struggle with this one, I know. Let the team tell you how much of this that they think they can get to a done state during the sprint or the iteration or the time box. They may tell you, hey, we can install the shelves during this sprint. All right. But the product owner says, well, I've already sequenced and prioritized your backlog, your sprint backlog, because my priority is the base cabinets. Okay. Well, the team comes back and says, or maybe they don't, which is bad. They say, look, I appreciate your attempt to sequence this for us, but it's a lot easier for us to install the shelves first without having all of the base cabinets in the way. So after some discussion, we agree to change that sprint goal and select that backlog item that we're talking about. And this is the part we can get done of it. Ooh, light just came on for everybody. All right. The main thing is think of what we can get done. And we have some options there. Now, landing the plane. Let's get off the planet. Stick around for this one, by the way. This is pretty cool. I heard an interview recently where there was a mindset shift being coached in an organization. And it was to stop asking for when we will get all of this And instead, we just agree on how much of it we can deliver during this time. That's a whole different mindset of what a lot of people experience, right? But it's exactly the kind of thinking pattern that as a product owner, you have to start developing, right? We have to reconsider that whole approach around what we're working on and why we're working on it and how much we think we can get done, right? And we start having better conversations. And that's why I think if we can reconsider this newfound respect and approach for the sprint backlog, it's going to help us deliver. It helped me for sure. It revolutionized a couple of enterprise delivery builds that I worked on in the past, where sprint backlog became what the team told me they thought they could get done out of the options that I had given them to help improve the product. Okay. Now, the product backlog, again, it actually contains ranked and generalized larger pieces of valuable work, not just stories. Okay. It's a higher level outcome that improves our product or service, and it provides enough clarity around the outcome so the team can have conversations about it. All right. That's what we're after. Now, the sprint backlog, remember, is specific. It's more detail oriented. Remember this from the Scrum Guide itself. You're going to get a reading at the end here, so hang on. No one tells the team how to turn a product backlog item into increments of value. Why do you think they said that? Now we know, right? Those who are closest to the work know the work best. We said that, right? Plus, it's theirs. So I hope you can take these thinking patterns back to your teams. Get more flow of value. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for more flow of value. Enjoyed the time today, and it's great to be back. Look for new stuff coming soon, particularly for members who buy me a coffee at Planet Product Owner. And until next time, have a safe and fun lean journey, my friends.